Creative Assembly absolutely fumbled the bag in 2023.
I'm serious about this stuff.
However, now we are in the midst of the great apology tour of 2024.
Sorry.
And to really kick things off, they've given us Thrones of Decay, the newest DLC for Total War Warhammer 3. But is it enough? Are we ready to run back to CA and suckle on the sweet, sweet bosom that is Total War? Or are they still fucking up worse than Drake's Ghost Riders? Hello y'all, I'm Troy, and woo-wee! Sorry this video took a while to come out because I've been playing a lot of Total War Warhammer 3 lately. But I really wanted to make sure to cover this DLC because, well, I love Total War and I love talking about it. Also because we are really seeing a shift in Creative Assembly's attitude and focus towards their flagship series. Thrones of Decay is their first major DLC release since their big apology. So in my eyes, and I'm sure in a lot of the communities, this is their first major test to see if CA can really put their money where their mouth is. And I'm happy to announce Thrones of Decay, well, I think it's pretty damn good. You really do feel like you are receiving your money's worth in content here. Is it the best DLC they've released ever? I don't know. I do have a few minor gripes, but overall, I'm very much enjoying it. Per usual, I'm going to go ahead and give a brief summary of what's all here, as well as what I think works, what doesn't work, what I think is good quality, what's not. And now, this is not a guide. I won't be going super deep into each faction and covering each individual unit. You know, I'm not the best Total War player out there. I'm rather mid, but I will be covering some highlights here, as well as each individual lord. I have played each one to at least a short campaign victory and, played all the big units. And this is my first review of a DLC. I'm not going to give the DLC a score or whatever. That's dumb. I'm just going to let you know if I believe the DLC is worth your time and, most importantly, your money. So that way you can go and make an informed decision with your wallets. I will do a brief summary on each lord and generally give their playstyle as well, because now you can purchase each lord separately. But before we jump in, I just want to remind y'all that if you enjoy my content and Total War, please like and subscribe. I talk a lot about Total War on this channel, as well as other games, so hop on in and join the fun. As well as don't be shy and leave a comment below. Let me know, what do you think of the current state of Total War, Thrones of Decay, or perhaps you just need to let something off your chest. Who knows? I welcome all opinions here as long as they're respectful. All right, so let's go ahead and jump on in. Thrones of Decay, what's all here? Now, a big part of this DLC is the big 5.0 update, which reworked the 3 factions involved with Thrones of Decay. And I want to say, first and foremost, that is entirely free, as well as a few other things that we'll go ahead and get to later. But with Thrones of Decay, there are 3 legendary lords available for purchase individually or bundled at a very slight discount. And these lords are Tamurkhan with Nurgle, Elspeth von Draken with the Empire, and Malakai Makaisson with the Dwarves. I think for me, a big part of why Thrones of Decay is feeling so great right now is that the races involved here with Nurgle, the Empire, and the Dwarves all desperately needed some big reworks and were very underpowered. And in classic Warhammer DLC faction, or really any DLC for that matter, these 3 races are now some of the strongest in the game, especially while playing with their new legendary lords. However, not like ridiculously overpowered. Maybe Tamurkhan is a bit OP, but you still got to know how to use them right. Now, a lot of people might have issues with this balancing, and I say, this Immortal Empires campaign, which is what 97% of the players play, is meant to be a spectacle. It's meant to be crazy and fun. This isn't fucking Valorant. Sure, there is multiplayer, but it's in no way super competitive. Let these factions be OP and fun. I'd much rather them release an OP faction than a fucking wet noodle. So yes, these factions are all, very powerful to just straight up overpowered, but I don't really count that against the quality of the DLC that much. Now I want to go ahead and give a brief summary of each new faction and legendary lord. Again, this isn't a guide, but I just want to go ahead and give the players a general play of each lord, so if only one seems like your vibe, you don't need to buy the whole pack. I made sure to play each one to at least a short campaign victory and into the end game, so that way I could try, these big new fun units. Let's start with my personal least favorite, which is Elspeth von Draken. I know the Empire is the most played faction in Warhammer, and I just have never understood that. Like within Warhammer, you have all these crazy, cool, unique races and creatures and weapons, and you want to go just with like Renaissance era humans with some very light steampunk. Although I have had some very good campaigns with them, and I still find the Empire enjoyable, they are one of my least favorite factions. So it's no surprise that Elspeth happens to be my least favorite lord here. However, she is now my favorite Empire lord because she has some pretty awesome mechanics and units. For one, I really enjoyed her focus on artillery and guns, which for me is the most interesting part of the Empire. Some unit highlights are the new Outriders equipped with grenade launchers. These mobile light cavalry units will just shred low to mid-tier infantry. The landship is also just wild and badass. Elspeth's main faction mechanic is the Imperial Gunnery School that is kind of similar to Ickett's workshop mechanic, allowing you to just buff these gunpowder units even further, as well as infuse them with some of Elspeth's dark magic and make some very cool, unique units. Elspeth herself is just a single target destroyer if you use her properly. She isn't that good in direct melee, but she's a very strong caster. I will say that the weakest part of her campaign is kind of the Garden of Moor mechanic. It's kind of meh. It is cool that you can kind of teleport around the Empire, but other than that, it kind of feels a bit tacked on. At least compared to like the Imperial Gunnery School and some of the other mechanics introduced. And you also don't really use the teleportation very early because initially you're just going to be fighting the vampire counts the whole time, so you don't really need to teleport across the Empire. Still, although she is my least favorite here, it's really only because I'm not crazy for the Empire itself. Elspeth and what she brings to the table in terms of units and a unique campaign is great. If you are at all a fan of the Empire, which a lot of Total War players are, she definitely is a must-buy. Now, let's go ahead and move on to Malakai, the new dwarf legendary lord. Now, I've always liked the dwarfs. They were actually my first long campaign victory back in Warhammer 2, when they were considered a very strong faction. However, since Warhammer 3, they have really fallen off. So I was very excited for a rework and a fresh new lord. And I have to say, the dwarves fucking shred now. They are back, baby. Malakai himself is very fun and a powerful campaign. His biggest boon is the Spirit of Grungi, which just gives him horde mechanics. Straight up, he can just recruit units from anywhere, as well as he has a special encampment stance that doesn't cost any movement, along with, multitude of other buffs. However, my minor gripe with Malakai is that the units introduced here were a bit of a mixed bag. Malakai himself is a Slayer engineer, so the focus is on Slayer, gunpowder, and artillery. The Doomseekers are these new high-tier Slayer infantry that look super badass. But I don't know if maybe I'm not using them right, or if they are meant to be wiped very easily, which makes sense. They are Slayers and have 0 armor. They're literally asking for death. But I had hoped their damage would be enough to outpace most enemies and that they'd still survive battles. They just don't feel quite worth the cost if you have to replace them constantly. Even if they do rack up a fair amount of kills, Slayer infantry just never really fits quite right into the dwarven kit, if you ask me. The dwarves always do best when you have a sturdy front line to hold the enemy in place, while your range and artillery do most of the damage. Slayers just don't make much sense in this formula. But again, maybe I'm not opening my mind and playing with them right. Please, if someone can use Slayers super effectively, let me know in the comments below. Give me a little guide down there. Also, the Goblin Skewers, they're kind of fun. They're kind of like this short range artillery that just shred large units. They do take a lot of micro to get into place correctly, but if you can, they're pretty good. All right, now the Thunder Barge, baby. Woo-wee. Now this unit, this fucking rocks, dude. If you haven't already, take a look at Legend of Total War's video where he does a Thunder Barge Doom stack. These might be the most powerful unit in the game right now. And I mean, they're just a great time to use and so fun to watch, just rain hell down on your enemies. Either way, I did feel mostly good about the new units here with the dwarves. But the main draw is Malakai's super fun and unique adventurous campaign where you get to fight a lot of different enemies. I'm a sucker for the dwarfs, and again, if you like the dwarfs, Malakai is definitely a must-buy. Now the final lord here, and my personal favorite, is none other than Nurgle's favorite, Tamurkhan. I played an entire campaign with Tamurkhan, achieving a long victory, crushing both Cathay and the Empire beneath my boot, and then fending off the Chaos Dwarf endgame scenario, and I gotta say, Tamurkhan is fucking OP. But gee whiz, is he so much fun to play. Nurgle is probably my favorite Chaos God. I always found the lore around him pretty interesting, how like his followers are always happy and yet disgusting and rotting. So while Nurgle was one of the shittiest factions for a long time, this rework and Tamurkhan is just what the Papa ordered. Tamurkhan's campaign mechanics are so strong. His main focus are his chieftains, which each one is associated with a specific faction and allow you to recruit some of their units. For example, the Chaos Dwarf Chieftain will eventually allow you to recruit Dreadquake Mortars, which is like the most overpowered artillery in the damn game. Not only do they bring in some crazy units, but also have some insane abilities. You can spend a unique currency, Dominance, to do things such as straight up replenish an entire army immediately, or give them back all their movement points, or give them the stock stance that the Skaven are known for and just ambush everyone. It is so powerful, but fuck man, is it just fun. You just shred. In my campaign, I quickly eliminated Grimgor as he's probably the only real threat in my area. And after that, I was just mopping the floor with everyone. And the new units for Nurgle are mostly pretty good. The Pestigors are meh, but the Plague Ogres, the Bile Trolls, and the Rot Knights are all very badass. Now, the Toe Dragon. From its stats, it looks like it should just shred infantry, but honestly, it really underperformed for me. I'd stick it in the front line and it would just not get as many kills as I'd expect. It was also surprisingly fragile and I did have to pull it out a few times. I will say the Toe Dragon has some pretty good speed for Nurgle standards. Either way, it's the big new Nurgle unit introduced here and it just left me a little disappointed. But that is my really only sole gripe here because everything else in Nurgle's DLC pack is great. And honestly, even if you don't like Nurgle or Chaos factions, I believe Tamurkhan is worth checking out for the $9 because he is just that fun and varied. With 6 chieftains, each bringing 3 units and 2 abilities, almost any playstyle can be worked out. Alright, so that's a breakdown of what we have here in Thrones of Decay. Overall, this DLC pack is great, and definitely one of the best for Warhammer 3 so far. They've done a lot to beef this up compared to their previous DLC, Shadows of Change, which I didn't cover, but I can say upon release, felt much more bare bones. Now, is it better than the Chaos Dwarfs? I don't know. I really like the Chaos Dwarf DLC, and I think that faction's badass. But I think for not introducing a whole new race into the mix, I think Thrones of Decay is probably the best one. There are some very minor gripes with each faction here, sure, but overall, with 3 legendary lords, 15 new units, and a slew of new heroes and generic lords, you are very much getting your money's worth here, as well as each of these factions being high quality. Nothing really feels tacked on, except maybe the Garden of Moor, but again, I think that's more just, it felt a little less fleshed out compared to the other mechanics here. So yeah, you know, with Thrones of Decay, you're definitely getting quality and quantity. So with that, I give Thrones of Decay my worth it stamp of approval. And no, I did not just steal that from Angry Joe. So great job, CA. Keep up the good work. Also want to add here is just like a little bit of a sprinkle on top. Alongside patch 5.0, CA also gave us a whole ass free lord with Epidemius too, which is something Creative Assembly, I think they haven't done it since Warhammer 2. I have to also quickly mention that CA announced a big update for Pharaoh. They will be expanding the map, adding both Mesopotamia and Greece, essentially combining Pharaoh and Troy and then some, all for free. So yeah, honestly, Creative Assembly has made a lot of consumer-friendly decisions lately, and we gotta give credit where credit is due. I know a lot of the fans feel jaded because how CA has treated them in the past, but you know, if we want good Total War games, we kind of have to learn to forgive them. But we always want to keep our eye on them. Forgive, but never forget. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below. If you're enjoying Thrones of Decay, what's your favorite lord included here? Also, please, if you haven't already, subscribe and hit this video with a like. So maybe then CA can give me some early access to some of their content. Please, CA, I'd like to release these videos a bit more timely. And I love Total War, come on. Thanks again and hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.